Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a special episode. We're inviting back Kay Wilson-Bolton to the show, and she is an associate broker at Century 21 Everest. Kay, welcome back to the show.
Oh, it's always nice to see you, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you back on. And I know we've talked about quite a few things, including, books, podcasts, Spirit of Santa Paula, and many, many other things. But what we're going to do today is we're also going to get into a little bit of a deep dive into real estate and your background in real estate, and really kind of flesh out that side of your story as well. So something that we've talked a lot about, maybe offline, but haven't brought it online. So excited to bring that content to our audience. But before we get into that, as you're aware, Kay, just like as is the audience, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Kay, we at Mission Matters amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Kay, what mission matters to you?
Today's mission is related to how important it is for people to have stable housing. As you know, I work with the homeless population in my community, and I'm finding that my role as a realtor dovetails nicely and in a difficult way with people who are not stable in their housing. But you don't have to be homeless to be unstable. So my goal is to bring awareness to the need in our country and in the world, but specifically our country, how important it is to have stable housing for families.
Absolutely. And I love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and individuals on the line to share why they do what they do, how they're doing it, really what matters to them, and what we can all learn and gain from that, so we all grow together. So again, great to have you back on. And I think, just to get us kicked off, maybe let's start out going a little bit further into your real estate background. Like, how did you get into just the real estate field in general?
It's a business I swore I would never go into. My father was a real estate broker, and it seemed like he always had trouble paying the bills, and it's because the escrows never closed on time. And so I thought, that is a business I will never go into. But in the early years of my working career, I married someone who was a real estate broker, and we moved to a small town called Santa Paula, California, and bought a very tiny real estate office, but back in that day was probably one of the larger ones in town. And so I was kind of stuck, and I had to make a decision that I was going to do it well or suffer. So I didn't want to suffer the rest of my life. So I decided to do it well, and it has been the perfect career for me, as it turns out.
Yeah. And maybe because you've experienced much of your real estate career in Santa Paula, maybe tell us a little bit just about the city itself.
Santa Paula is one of 10 cities in Ventura County. On the coast, we're an agricultural community, and we have probably one of the lowest tax bases in the county due to the agricultural environment. We're not industry-based except for that one, but not so it has a huge employment base where people can afford to buy homes and live in town. It's a beautiful rural environment. Ventura County is very diverse, from beach communities to enclaves like Ojai, and then in the more prosperous areas of Thousand Oaks, Newberry Park, Agoura area, which is an adjunct to Los Angeles County, where the population centers are very diverse and much larger than ours. We're about 33,000 in population, and we've grown at less than the national average of 2% for probably the last 50 years.
And so I want to stick in maybe those early years a little bit longer, because I know that your approach to just real estate and your involvement in the community, I feel like, and it's unique in my opinion, in the way that you really, when you arrived there, you decided, like, if this was going to be your home, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you got involved. Like, you didn't necessarily do some of the things that maybe some individuals in real estate do when they're just getting started in a new environment. So maybe tell us a little bit more about those early years.
Yeah, you're so right. I'm glad you remembered that. I went to a training seminar when I was young. I was 27, guess 28 when I started in the business, which was 45 years ago. And they taught us that you have to knock on doors, you have to leave flyers, you have to have open houses, you have to call for sale by owner. And I did it one time, and the man was not nice, although he was polite. And I said, I see you're trying to sell your home. Do you mind if I come see it? Which is what all the coaches said to say. And he said, why should I let you see my home? And I didn't have an answer for that. And I think I hung up. And I never did it again. And so I decided that if I was going to survive in this, I had to meet people. Moving to a new town and starting a career in real estate is something I've actually had nightmares about, because I don't know how anybody would do that and have the success that I've enjoyed. So I decided to meet people. I needed to go where they were. And it was to Boys and Girls Club events, Chamber of Commerce, all the social groups that exist in every community. And so by starting that, I became actively involved in boards of directors and as a volunteer to help put things together, make money, and serve people. So that became my, quote, farm. And in real estate, that's a terminology that we use to cultivate a particular neighborhood or demographic or age group. And so mine just became my volunteer base. And as it turned out, it was the right one for me.
Yeah. And when I think about like many professions, especially in the service industries, such as financial advisors, real estate agents, a lot of different industries like that, where there's a certain amount of sales component, a whole lot of amount of expertise in order to be an expert in your field and to really, do well for your clients. I feel like a lot of people maybe gravitate towards certain things. Some people may be volunteering. Some people, it may be sports, like they golf, or just a lot of different ways to do that. But what I find unique is that not only did you kind of join organizations or become, active in them, like you either volunteered or you took like leadership roles or other things like that. Like, what does that commitment to doing this mean to you? Because you didn't do it just to get business. Like, you actually were active. You didn't just show up.
Oh, no. I knew that I needed to get to know people, but I also wanted to get to know my community. And I felt if I could do anything to make it better, that's good for me. It's good for my neighbors. And it was not a selfish effort. The more I met people, the more was expected. And if you don't do it well, people are going to know that. But when you do it well and your heart is in the right place, it's acknowledged by people who want to trust you and get to know you, and also allow you opportunities to serve in other capacities, which add meaning and value to any community.
Yeah. And so the reason why I ask you those questions, by the way, is because for those that are watching this, like that are thinking about, careers and they're just getting started, and it's not like there's different ways to go about business and different ways to go about things. And as you see from Kay's story, there's a way that she was able to find something that matched her ethics. She was able to give value even without necessarily getting anything in return. I'm guessing like you didn't go to one event and all of a sudden struck gold, had all this business. No, you were doing what you felt in your heart should be done and being a real part of that community, right?
Right. I mean, you can't do anything in life and get a reward without doing it well. Politics may have a little different flavor of that, but people are going to know if your heart's in the right place, and you don't get reward if the benefit is not evident to everybody.
What would you tell some of the, you're still obviously very active, and we'll talk more about your brokerage in a moment, but what kind of advice would you give to maybe some of the individuals that are out there just getting their feet wet in real estate and just kind of getting out there and getting started?
Number one is know your ethics guidelines. The National Association of Realtors now has 23 ethics statements. Part is for each other and part is for the public. And it is to make sure the behavior is correct and get to know what those are. You can make a mistake and not realize it. But one of the big mistakes is to talk badly about a competitor and to disparage them specifically to a client. Another is to try and buy a property with somebody else's name. so that the client doesn't know that it's actually you. Those seem obvious, but those ethics are there for a reason. And get to know and love your colleagues. If you don't have a good relationship with colleagues, you have a hard time putting deals together. And the one that suffers in that is your client. So if you're cranky and don't follow through, don't show up for appointments, don't provide documents when you're supposed to, you're not going to be someone that your colleagues want to work with. And so my advice always is to cultivate them as your best friends.
It's great advice. I want to switch it up a bit here. So just jumping around slightly. So part of the reason, of course, we brought you back in the show is that I'm thrilled to announce that you'll be participating in another Mission Matters release. This one we're going to focus a little bit more on the real estate side of things and your ideas behind, of course, housing and the accessibility towards housing. So maybe just high level for everybody that's watching. And don't worry for everybody that's watching, by the way, we're going to bring Kay back on the line once the book is actually live and out there and in print. And we'll do a deep dive, but maybe high level for today, Kay. Tell us just a little bit about what you plan on proposing in the upcoming book.
I want people to think differently about their investment and looking differently at rate of return for the sake of your community. I also want us to acknowledge in a personal way the angst and the drama that goes with people who are living in poverty. And for now, I'm just going to focus on what's happening in America. I read a statistic this week that the Oxfam, it's a global charitable donation group, stated in 2017 that the 22 most wealthy men in the world have more wealth within that 22 number than all of the women in Africa.
Wow.
And there are 500 million women in Africa. And so I'm not disparaging those who have wealth, but we need to be concerned and look differently at people who do not. Parents today who don't have money to pay the car insurance are at risk of having the car towed, having a serious accident that causes a severe financial setback. And the kids learn that behavior. And unless there is a real effort to change the educational system where kids are treated the same, have the ability to get to school no matter what happened to the family car, we're looking at generational poverty. And that should scare everyone because history has shown, for thousands of years that there are uprisings within people groups where there are disadvantages and they feel that they're suffering because of the ruling class having all the wealth. I am not a socialist. I'm not talking about distributing wealth, but I am concerned about how we're going to change generational poverty in the United States. And one of the ways is to provide housing of some kind. That is where you get the stable family. You have a place where the kids can do homework, can celebrate birthdays, celebrate Christmas, have family gatherings, have their own bed, or even sharing a bed in a quiet, private place. There is nothing that is more important than that. Health obviously ranks in there, but without stable housing, I don't know how the next generation is going to survive. This global rise in interest rates, the cost of doing business, the cost of everything. It's alarming in my view, and in my work with homeless people, I get the residual and the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, of people who have lost housing. And that in itself is another topic, but that's where we're headed in communities, I'm afraid.
I do want to stick on that a little bit longer, though. For those that maybe haven't caught some of our previous work together, of course, we'll get into your brokerage. We're going to talk. I want to know more about about your concepts around affordable housing, and even we can get local and regional if you like, in terms of Santa Paula and other things like that. But maybe just talk a little bit about that, so that people know that you're not just giving an opinion. That you're for those that haven't caught maybe some of our previous interviews, but that you're working and you're an expert in this and you're working on this day in and day out.
Yes, I serve on two advocacy groups where we are talking about how to require developers to add an affordable component to every housing development.
Yeah.
There is a myth throughout America and in my community that affordable housing means broken down cars, laundry on the porch, broken windows, and crime. In Santa Paula, where we have some very nice affordable projects, the crime rate within those projects, those neighborhoods, are less than they are in conventional neighborhoods.
Mm.
It's because there's on-site management and there are rules that you have to abide by. So there's one myth that needs to be dispelled. The other is that affordability in Ventura County, someone has to earn $84,000 to be considered not moderately poor. So the moderate price range or the moderate range for income is $84,000 for people who are in the lower, groups for affordability. So we've had, I'll just give an example, and it's a touchy subject in my community, but a local farming group who has been excellent stewards of the land and of taking care of their farm workers and gets a thumbs up every time they want to do a project in the community. They were granted an allocation of 1,500 homes on a 500-acre parcel. It took some marginal farmland out of production, which was controversial, but because Santa Paula has green belt all the way around it, there was no place to grow. And so there was a requirement initially that they provide 20% of that development, which would be 300 homes, to be in the affordable category. And in Ventura County, my community, affordable is teachers' salaries, nurses, and some of the first responders. So that took away that myth. But then they came back to a city council in about 2006 and asked the council to let them pay what is called an in lieu fee, which means rather than building that $300,000 unit, we're going to give you $4,464 for each home in the entire project that will go into a fund that you can use to build affordable homes somewhere else. Well, in reality, $6 million, some $100,000, but there is no place to build them. So looking back, we should have made them or required that they follow through with the development agreement and build those homes, because now we have a shortage of 300 units and there's no place to put them. So we have a nice bank account, but it's have no value if there's no place to build the project. So I'm working on two advocacy groups where we are looking at every city's requirement to provide for affordable component and also to advocate where we can to encourage city councils to have the courage to make them build them.
What do you think drives you towards this this advocacy? How does this tie into your day to day? Because I'll tell you, not everybody has the like your mission. It's pretty well defined. It's straightforward. Like what drives you and keeps going to do that? Because that's not easy. I shouldn't use the word fight, but it's not easy mission. It's not an easy thing to do in your field, especially with what you're doing. What drives you to keep doing that?
Well, I'm Christian, and I was raised in a home where I remember watching my mother feed what we called then hobos. We don't do that anymore, just so everybody knows. But that's what we called them then. Our home in New Hampshire was on the railroad track line, and they rode the rails, and they knew that at our house they could get a meal. So at 5 years old, I remember watching them eat a plate of food on our back step. Little did I know that impression would be so firmly planted in my heart. It burns. When you see something, it burns an image in your brain that you cannot unsee. And so that stayed with me. And so Jesus said, feed people, love them, don't discriminate, don't judge, don't be angry, forgive your enemies, love your enemies. All of those things dovetail right into all of this work. So I became a chaplain for Ventura County Fire Department in 2007. And Spirit of Santa Paula was just forming at that time, and we had not really found our stride. But on Christmas Eve morning in 2008, we found that a homeless man had died in one of our churches.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning. And I was astonished that in all of our comfort zones that we even had homeless people in town.
Yeah.
But I learned that the 13 people who had been in and out of that church at night were from Santa Paula. And so God put it on my heart that I had to do something. And so the rest is really a super neat bit of history, how one person, it happened to be me. In other communities, it's many other people who get the same drive, whether it's to help animals, aging people, just there's an array of things to do in every community, but that was mine.
Yeah.
And so as a result of, in the real estate environment, knowing the affordability challenges and conversations, and then to find homeless people living in my community, it became a blend of mission that do well in my business so that I can help resolve the issues of homelessness. And it's changed a lot, addictions and alcoholism and, challenges of all kinds have kind of changed the face of homelessness. But I will tell you, with this recent increase in rents, it's exacerbated it. Our shelter, it has room for 49 people. We currently have 52. We're stretching it. They were just, sometimes I use words that aren't politically correct, but here's one. On Monday, the Corps of Engineers and County Watershed, police and sheriff's deputies ran out of the river about 70 people where they have no place to go. And, the chatter on Facebook and Nextdoor can get pretty heated. And I really try to respond softly so that I can get people to think about what they just said. But many people don't care where they go. They don't want them here in town. They don't care where they go. When you look at the Los Angeles streets, there are children, old people, veterans, families living on a street corner.
Yeah.
Where do they pee and poop? How do they get food? What do they do when they have a toothache? There are social services everywhere. But I'll tell you, without a kinder population looking at this problem to solve it, it's going to get a lot worse. City of Oxnard is probably the most exemplary town in our community, designating land to build high-rise apartment buildings for homeless people. Nobody wants that, but we have to want it, or we're going to have homeless people on our streets. So that's where my passion kind of is driven, to have people look at things differently. If somebody hasn't been touched by homelessness or drug addiction in their family, they're not going to have the heart to participate in the change. But I pray they don't experience, but more and more people are. And I think that's changing some hearts and minds towards helping to solve the problem.
Yeah. And for people that are watching this for context or listening to this, so we're recording this in November of 2022. So a lot going on in the economy and, inflation. I mean, prices rising, food, like the cost of groceries, like it's tough for most people, especially what you mentioned in terms of like housing. It's tough for most people, but it's possible it could get worse, right? And so, like as you mentioned, kind of earlier in the interview, that you're really focused on sometimes, what are known as the least of these, like those that need the help the most as of this moment. And so for them, if we're not making that conscious effort, it could get a lot worse, can it?
It can, and then your streets get filled up. And I think in fairness, we're all feeling the pinch
of
this changing economy. You would just fill your gas tank, and how does that feel?
Does not feel good, Kay, I'll tell you.
Yeah. Last night on NBC News, they said that the cost of this year's Thanksgiving dinner is 20% more.
Wow.
So that's a bit, in reality, does that really affect most of us? Most listening to this, probably not. Yes, we're spending more, but does it mean our housing is at risk or the car payment? Probably not. But I will tell you, for 20% rise for most people below that moderate income level, they may just do without Thanksgiving dinner. So what does that do? Does it teach them that they can have bologna instead? Does it teach them that a ham at half price, maybe the day before, is good enough for them? Is that what we want? What that does is it creates classes. And when you start creating classes of opportunity and dysfunction, that's where the discontent comes in. And if we don't start with this generation of parents helping the kids change that cycle, the parents are going to need more and more support as we go along, and the kids are going to need it. So that means those who are paying taxes are going to have to pay more and maybe retire later than they wanted to. So there's a burden on either side. So if we can figure out a way to balance the pain, I think we'll have a happier society going forward. But, just elevating dialogue is important, but it has to be reasoned dialogue so that we're listening to each other.
Well, I'm glad that affordable housing has you as an advocate on their side and working on it and continuing to be a voice to educate the public in the issues, really, and allow people to understand like the importance of it. As you mentioned, not maybe all of us, this isn't front or top of mind, but these moments of you coming on shows like mine and others and really getting the word out there for people to understand, I feel is vitally important. I want to jump around here a bit, and I do want to circle back to your brokerage for a bit with some of the time that we have left here and just get a little bit more into your practice just overall. So Century 21 Everest, you mentioned you purchased it quite some time ago when you first moved to Santa Paula. Tell us a little bit more about the business and what you do today.
Well, actually, that's a little different. When we moved to Santa Paula, we purchased the office of Floyd Hare.
Oh, got it.
He had been the mayor, had just a stellar reputation, very popular guy. So that was a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to take over his business. And then a few years later, we had been growing the business. We changed the name to Cal West Real Estate. And then we went into a franchise of Better Homes and Gardens. Then through a change in my life, I left that and purchased the Century 21 Buena Vista office in Santa Paula, and then grew it to 5 offices. I was in Ojai, Ventura, Camarillo, Fillmore, and Santa Paula. And boy, the economy really took a terrible dive in the 2007, 8, and 9 period of time. So I was fortunate to, before I lost everything, to align with Century 21 Hometown in the San Luis Obispo area. So they purchased my company, and I went to work for them. Then just an evolution. So now Century 21 Everest has purchased some of those companies and have now just joined with the Century 21 Alliance, which owns companies up and down California. So I'm just excited about the growth within that. But I kind of do my own thing. I take the best from what the franchise offers, what the company offers, and I have to adapt it to what works for me. I have my own office and location, and I have a big property management business that I'm also running. And that's where I hear so much of the sad stories. People unable to pay the rent through a big gift from United Way. Spirit of Santa Paula received about $80,000 to help people pay the rent. And so we've kept people housed. It's much easier to keep people housed than it is to have them lose housing and then try to rehome them because their credit is ruined. They have a bad record. Landlords won't give a good recommendation and everything falls apart. And so there goes that cycle being accelerated that makes everything worse. So we try to put plug the holes in the dike where we can to keep people housed. So I'm still doing real estate. Yet this last year was my best year ever, and had lots of good reviews from clients, which I should probably publicize more, but I let God be my advocate. I try not to run around talking about how great a service we provide.
Wow, Kay, this is a great. I love having you back at this show. I get to learn so much more about you. I don't think I've ever heard you share that story about your mother that you shared today, and kind of and where this impression of wanting to help others was really imprinted. You can't forget what you saw, right? And it left this mark on you that wanted to go forward. And I think that's part of. I can see that theme throughout as I get to learn more and more about your career, just the way you interact and the way that I'm sure others interact with you as well. So I think it's amazing. I just have to say it's been great having you back on the show. I can't wait till I get to have you back on again when the book is actually live, and then we'll do a deep dive into your writing. But for now, I just have to ask, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for your projects in your career? What's next?
Our homeless shelter is in the middle of an expansion.
Yes.
We're all suffering because the place is a mess, and we have to move everybody out into newly constructed portion for a 3-week time period while they finish the interior of the old section. That's going to be so painful, it's not even funny.
Oh.
We're trying to plan for Thanksgiving. We have their street outreach program. We have more people coming to us now during the day because they were displaced from the riverbed. And so that's on the horizon, and we just really need case management. My case managers suffer from perceived failure on their part to not do more for our homeless people. We have 3 families who have been approved for housing, but there's no place to put them. And so that's where we need the affordable component in every building project that's on the books. And if we don't have that affordable component, my people will be living at Harvard Shelter for a long time. But what's so funny? When I walk into the building, the kids run, and it's Kay's here. And those kids do not know they live in a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
To them, that is home. And I'm just so thankful that we've been able to provide that element for them. They've got their normal stuff with each other and parents, but they're doing it in a very open environment. And there's lots of aunts and uncles around. Most people are very sweet and tolerant about the kids, but they don't know that they are homeless.
Wow.
They're not. They live in a shelter. And I don't know. I'm so grateful for that, because that's probably the greatest gift we can give them during this time.
Oh, I'm grateful as well. And Kay, again, amazing having you back on the show. If somebody wants to learn more about your work, whether it's at Santa Paula or Spirit of Santa Paula, or whether it's at Century 21 Everest, what's the best way for people to follow up and to connect?
2 ways. One, website's probably the best, spiritofsantapaula.org. And my business website is realestatemagik.com. And it's not magic voodoo. Magic stands for mercy and grace in Christ. And that's where my heart beats. So people just have to put up with it. And so realestatemagik.com. I've had that web name since they first came out. So it's been, I don't know, when was that? 19 whatever.
Yeah.
So it really worked well for me. But so it's realestatemagik.com and spiritofsantapaula.com. And you can just Google my name and you can find all of those.
Wonderful. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the link and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time listening to a Mission Matters episode or engaging with the platform, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, why they do what they do, and what we can all learn and gain from that so that we can all make the world a better place. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Kay, again, it's been a pleasure. Can't wait till the next time. Thanks again for coming back on.
Thank you, Adam. Bye for now.